Hello, I'm Donde Plowman, Chancellor of the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. We are Tennessee's R1 land-grant flagship university. I'm here in the heart of campus in the Haslam College of Business. Join me as I sit down with Monica Langley for Office Hours, Business Edition.
Delighted to be with you today. You have been our Chancellor since 2019.
That's correct, and thank you for inviting me.
Our pleasure. I am a UT grad.
Yes, okay,
and
great.
Now a professor of practice at Haslam College of Business. So go Vols.
Go Vols is right. I wore my orange today.
I know.
Just a tad.
Exactly. As a faculty member, I've been able to hear your vision for the university, this flagship campus. Tell us just in a couple quick sentences for the audience where you want to take UT Knoxville.
So I see us as I talk about it as the modern land-grant university. So what does that really mean? What we're trying to do here is two things that nobody else is doing the way we are. The first one is undergraduate education that's unparalleled. Haslam College of Business does that. So many students as freshmen want in this college. And by that I mean, what is unparalleled? You come here to be a volunteer, you learn to lead, to serve, and our support for students has just skyrocketed our retention rates. We want students, as the land grant, to get through college in 4 years. So we want to be fabulous in undergraduate education, which I think we are. And there's something distinctive about the way we do it. We really rely on CliftonStrengths Finder, the Gallup organization's tool.
We're going to talk about that in a minute.
And then the other thing is our approach to research is focusing on high impact research. What do I mean by that? Research that the state of Tennessee and really the nation need. So that's the other part of our Access mission, is making our discovery accessible to the people of Tennessee and around challenges that they're experiencing.
This goes to a theme that you have of next level.
Yes.
You want UT Knoxville to be the next level.
That's right.
And one of the 3 points that you make also is athletics, to be the best athletics.
Yes.
School.
Well, we have 3 strengths that we're trying to leverage as we want to move to the next level. We know we're doing something very unique in student success and student life, so we're going to continue to build that and let the world know. If I was a parent these days sending a kid to college, I'd want the experience we offer. Number 2 is this high impact research, the way I'm talking about it. You know, the world right now, nuclear energy, AI, information sciences, all of that is supply chain management. Those are things you hear talked about every day in these health, cancer. Those are things we're focusing on because Tennessee needs it. And then the third is we're trying to be the best athletic department in the country. I think we already are. Our athletic director would say we have a little ways to go. But that's a strength I'm proud of. Our athletes have the highest GPA they've ever had. It's higher than the average student, which is, our average students make pretty good grades here. So we're doing something right, and we're winning the right way in athletics. I'll say this, that we've had several years where every single team, every sport, competed in postseason competition. And I don't think there's any other university in the country that can say that. So proud of that.
Well, let's talk about just thriving in the modern era of higher education. It's no secret that the trust in higher education and even in the value of a college degree has decreased.
Correct.
So how do you answer that? And what's your opinion on the state of higher education?
Well, the state of higher education has come under criticism. Some of it a bit deserved, to be honest with you. I don't think as an industry we have focused enough on what students and families need and want. They want good jobs. And we as an industry have sort of acted as if, that'll come if you get a good degree here. I think we're doing some things here that have really addressed that very directly. Of course, in addition to a business school and an engineering school that have more of that focus, we started a new college called the College of Emerging and Collaborative Studies. We call it KEX for short because it's too long of a name. But it's a college that really doesn't have any faculty per se, but it is created to help students stack together modules from across many colleges. College of the Business, Colleges of Engineering, College of Arts and Sciences. And why are we doing that? Because the industry tells us that's what we really care about. So that college, for example, has 400 corporate partners that they are meeting with regularly to say, okay, what's the latest on your need level? So those two things are really, really important parts of what we're trying to do. And I think, I gave a talk last year at Ohio State on the modern land grant. And one of the things I said there is that if you walk around, like if I went outside on the street and said to the average person walking around, so what do you think about higher education? They'd probably roll their eyes and go, oh, it's too expensive. I don't know if you can get a job.
Exactly.
But if you said, what do you think of the University of Tennessee, Knoxville? They'd say, I love that place. I hope my children can go there. I graduated from there. I want my kid to be the first in our family to graduate. They love the place. They smile. They beam. Same thing's true in Ohio when I gave that talk. If you ask them about Ohio State, people love it. And so I think the national narrative doesn't necessarily match the local situation.
I'm a graduate, as I said, in 1980, and I was the first in my family to go to college.
Wow.
So it was so exciting to be a first-gen student here.
Sure.
And propelled me for all my,
All
4
your
decades
successes.
of career. Yeah. Okay. How do you handle the pressure of this, though, you personally? Because it is a high-profile, high-stress job, Donde.
Is it?
Or maybe not to you.
No, it is. And especially right now, I think just with what's just a lot of uncertainty ahead of all of us. But I think the first thing is having a great team around me. I would put my cabinet, which is the vice chancellors, up against any in the country. They're trusted advisors. We talk things through. We've been very imaginative and creative. I think that helps. When you're out there and you feel alone, I also have a tremendous boss. Randy Boyd is president of the UT system, and we have a great board. And so I don't feel I have friends who are at universities, and I don't know, my board chair, I don't think we got a new board chair, I don't think she likes me. And I don't have those pressures. So, for example, when we've gone through some tumultuous kind of situations, Randy Boyd's one of the first people I talk to. And I want his input. I make the decision, but I don't really make any big decisions without talking it through with him. And I think that's a really important, I want to be that same kind of boss to the people who report to me. I want them to feel like, wow, I have access to her and she can help me if I need her. So I think that's a big part of it. I think the other part is just having a really clear sense of what you're trying to do and being able to articulate that. And I think, talking to folks about moving to the next level, about leveraging the strengths that we have. We're very popular. I don't know if you know, but every 17-year-old in the country just about wants to come to school at Tennessee. So we don't face the same challenges that other schools are facing, the threat of declining enrollments. Tennessee's a growing state. We're one of 5 states that are going to have double-digit growth by 2040. So now that creates different problems because every other state in the country is coming here for our students. We want them to stay here. We're really well positioned for this time in the history of higher ed. But we've got to be bold and we've got to, make decisions that are good for the state and good for the citizens who fund us.
After 4 decades, in the corporate and media worlds, I see you as a CEO of a public institution practically. Yes. But what's different from a public university and a public company?
Well, I've been on boards of public companies and I see their focus. And in some ways, I think public universities, I think we do a better job than some. We could benefit from really constantly thinking about what do our stakeholders want. Because in a public company, it's what are the shareholders, what are they talking about, how will this, what are we returning, what is the ROI, what is the value, what's our value contribution. I think that kind of focus helps bring public universities a little more accountable. And so I think, Randy Boyd's an entrepreneur. I was dean of a business school. I think we sort of have that language going. I think as a public university, we don't have the degrees of freedom in terms of we have more constraints in some ways than corporate America.
Right.
In terms of hiring, firing, that kind of thing. But I think there are a lot of similarities. The fact that I'm a CEO, I have lunch once a month with Jim Haslam. Big Jim, some people call him Mr. Haslam. He's 95 now. And I talked to him about, okay, when you're a CEO, you were CEO your whole career. What would you have done in this situation? It's like CEO to CEO conversation, because these jobs can be a little lonely, you might say. And I just get tremendous insights from him about the CEO part of the job.
Exactly. And let's look at you as the CEO here. You have a huge budget, almost $2.5 billion,
Correct.
a workforce of 11,000 staff and full-time faculty, and a student body that's basically 40,000 customers.
Yes.
So what does ROI, since you mentioned it, mean to you?
Yeah. So to me, it means a couple things. One is that students and families feel like the experience here was worth every dollar they spent, that the value we added to that young person at a period when part of the challenge of going to college is growing up. and did we deliver on that? I think we also need to continue to think about what are the kinds of jobs our students are getting when they get out of here. We recently did a survey, we do it every year, about what percentage of our students are employed or on their way to graduate school within 6 months of graduation. And that number has come up from where it was 7 years ago. But it was 90%. Now, I'd like that to be at 100%.
Right.
But I'm really proud of where it's at, and that I think that means that we're delivering, but we can always do better. They can't just be, I got a job, I got a good job, I got a meaningful job. I think the other thing is, do we deliver for the state? We need more teachers, we need more nurses, we need more engineers in the state. So it's paying attention also to where the need is, industry needs in our local, the state of Tennessee. So that's something we've got to always keep our eye on.
You are in the middle of some major issues that are very hot topics across the nation right now. One is the business of sports at the college level. You became a big newsmaker in 24 when you took an epic stand against the NCAA. Tell me about that, and did you realize that you were going to become such a prominent face of this?
Okay, so first let me just remind you that yes, I did make public my concerns about what they were about to do, but only a year ahead of that, the previous year, we had just completed an investigation of our football program, which our university did, handed the entire investigation results to the NCAA. They barely conducted more than a handful of interviews after that. And we went to the infractions committee, and we turned ourselves in. That didn't make me popular this side of the house.
That's interesting.
Why would you do that? Well, because I became aware of violations. Now, in retrospect, I think that was like the only case before NIL where impermissible benefits was the issue. But they were against the rules at that time. So we had cooperated. And we were recognized for our exemplary, is what the NCAA said about us, exemplary cooperation. So then less than a year later, they came back with, everything had changed. NIL was out of control,
Let's say what NIL is.
Okay. NIL is name, image, likeness is what it stands for. And it is the notion that student athletes, which I agree with, should be compensated for their name, image, likeness.
Okay,
Universities had been using that, making money off that.
Right, okay.
And they ought to share in that. So, the Supreme Court ruling came down 9-0, saying basically the NCAA's position and the conferences had been wrong, that we had been violating antitrust. And so it just unleashed the wild, wild west. There were really no rules, no guidelines. They were coming from the NCAA, and then they'd be revised, and there weren't, they changed them. It was just confusing. And so I was not happy with what they were threatening to do. So, yeah, I wrote the letter. Did I think it would get 6 billion engagements in 1 week on social media? No. Every time I say that now, I think, oh my gosh, if I'd have known that, would I have still done it? And
But
most
yes,
of those,
I think so.
probably, most of those engagements are very positive. And I'd hit a nerve. And some of what I said in here was like, wait, you got to be fair. You got to be honest. We got to have some sort of rule-making system we can depend on. And you can't go back and retroactively chase somebody down for a rule that didn't exist at the time. So anyway, not to get lost in that, no, I had no idea it would be that big. But I don't regret doing it. And we still haven't really adjusted to all of that.
That's exactly what's going on. There's so much transition right now in the industry of college
Correct.
sports. So how do you manage the athletics at UT in a way that doesn't clash with our competitive pressure
Right.
that we want to win versus the compliance risk that
Right.
you have to watch out for?
Right. So the first thing is have an athletic director that you have 100% confidence in. And I picked Danny White at a time when what I was saying was we're going to win with integrity. We're going to do it the right way. And I hired someone I knew would do that. He's also very smart, very futuristic. It's one of his top strengths. Very focused on what the industry needs to do. So I don't spend 5 minutes, honestly, thinking about how well managed is our athletic department. I have total confidence. Now, we've got a lot of reliability systems in place there, but I meet frequently with Danny. He's hired great coaches, a lot of confidence in our program. I spend a lot of time on all of this above. Like, so for example, I'm the chair of the Southeastern Conference. That's a 2-year commitment. I just started it this year.
Well, that's big.
That is big, and I'm also the only woman in that group. Isn't that interesting? 16.
No surprise, actually.
16 schools, but I love my colleagues, and we all want this to change. We're all frustrated. Like, how did
What
we
is the
get here?
biggest change that you want, Donde?
Well, there's a lot of specifics, but we need to get the payment of athletes. We need to be sharing revenues with them, but it is out of control. It's unsustainable financially. No school can sustain this long term. And then there's other things like this transfer portal is ridiculous. That I understand how it came about, but it's created so much roster instability, and the job of the coach is now changed to I got to recruit back all my players every day, every
Wow.
year. And I think now we've got these concerns about eligibility, like we don't really know what the rules are. All of a sudden that is, so like those 3 things right there, I think fans want the transfer portal thing resolved. Athletes ought to be able to transfer without penalty, maybe once or twice, but transferring every year.
Yes.
It's not good for student athletes. I heard of an athlete the other day, I don't know, how is this possible? Transferred 7 times, had been at 7 schools.
In college.
Yeah, I can't picture how that's happening. That's not. They're not getting a degree. They can't be getting a degree that way.
Right.
So it's just we want to be a rule-bound system, rule-based system. So we need to agree on some basic rules, which we are trying to do in the House settlement. But the House settlement has not been that easy to implement. And I won't get lost in the weeds of that, but yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, it's huge. But after all this and all the effort you put on it and trust in your athletic director, do you sometimes get in the room when they're picking their coach, who's going to be the coach of the teams? Are you involved in that?
I'm not involved as Danny's brainstorming, thinking about names. Once he'll call me and say, here's who I'm thinking about. I want to bring this person in on 2 different occasions. When he hired Josh, when he hired Kim, those are the 2 big hires. I came I interviewed them. Josh, it was during COVID, so we did it on the Zoom. Kim, I came down and met with her, and so I'm involved in terms of giving my input, but it's not my decision. It's Danny's decision.
And I think that the university is always so big on athletics,
Yes.
but sometimes the teams don't have great seasons.
Right.
No matter everything you're doing
Right.
with all the great coaches and athletic director. So how do you navigate that when we have a bad season?
Yeah, I think with social media, it is kind of worse than it used to be because I'm on social media, I see it, and we have I think, Danny says the best fan base in the country. I believe that. Mm-hmm. There's a small, very vocal group of them that let you know about every little thing.
Right.
Danny manages it quite well, I think. But I think, I asked Rick Barnes that question recently. So how
Our
do you help the
basketball coach.
players in defeat? And he said, it was interesting, he said, I treat wins and losses kind of the same. What do we learn from it? Let's go. What's next? Where are we going next? What's the next challenge? What's the next thing we need to do? Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really interesting. I treat them basically the same. And he said, in fact, I might even be harder on them when we win. So yeah, if you stop and think about it, every weekend there's only a 50% chance you're going to win at whatever you're playing.
That's true.
But we all want to be the winner.
And you talk about the portal, the UT football team did not get a quarterback through the portal. And then we had eligibility issues on the last quarterback. Then we have inconsistent seasons in even basketball and occasionally. And then your championship coach in the baseball left to go to the pros. You got a lot going on there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think athletics is different. There's a lot more going on now. I mean, coaches have always come and gone anywhere. I think all the things going on right now with lack of rules makes it complicated. But I think my job is to stress the importance that athletics is for the university. I think it is for the state. It brings people together who, if you're sitting in the stadium, Neyland Stadium, you don't know if the person next to you, you don't know what their politics are, you don't know where they go to church. You just know you both love volunteers. Mm-hmm. That's a good thing.
True
and
that.
It's a part of what's attracting students here. There's no doubt about it. When we have 43 million viewers in 1 year of our sporting events, well, it's not surprising we have almost 70,000 applications for the freshman class. So it helps us in a lot of ways.
Is it true if we win on a Saturday, for example, that then on Monday you have more applicants to the school?
There's been periods where we tracked that. And it was the weekend we beat Alabama 3 years ago, I had the number at the time in my head, but yeah, they surged over the weekend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's talk about another hot topic, which is sports betting. A student was recently fired from the sports broadcasting team for betting on college football games. Now that raises an interesting question for you, Donde. Mm-hmm. What is your position on betting at the university by students, athletes, and employees?
Well, you have to remember, I grew up as a Methodist minister's daughter, and all betting was bad of any form, anywhere, anytime. Uh-huh. So there's that. But I'm very concerned about sports betting in some ways. If you stop and think about it, why? I mean, it's here. It's where we are. Mm-hmm. But the SEC
and it's legal in Tennessee and in the nation.
I just don't want it getting close to the university. I don't want there ever to be any kind of question about the university's integrity with any of that. Recently the SEC made a very strong stance. The NCAA was about to okay student and student athlete betting, I think, on pro sports. And we said as a conference, you've got to be kidding me. That seems like the next step towards making it okay to bet on our own team.
Right.
And so we made a really strong statement and actually got that changed.
The NCAA changed its position.
They did.
It didn't take that position. It was about to on betting.
But it wasn't easy because at that point we had to go back and sort of like get a bunch of votes and, it was, but we did it.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to take a position on those things and really draw as bold a line between us and that as possible.
I get it. Another hot topic you're in the throes of is AI. Yes. What is its application, artificial intelligence? What is the application here on campus? As someone from the corporate world, I have learned academia does not really move at the speed of business or necessarily technology.
Correct.
So how are you changing that at UT?
So we're working as hard as we can to get faculty up to speed on what it is, how to use it. There's an interesting article not long ago in the Chronicle about how higher ed in general they'd faced this, thought about it incorrectly was the assumption.
Wow.
They thought about it as, oh, this is dishonesty, this is cheating, as opposed to how do we help students understand what it is and be ready to use it in the workplace.
And they need to be leaders in it,
Right.
actually.
Right. And so AI is changing how we do everything. And so we need to be part of that and part of helping our students be prepared for it when they leave here. I had lunch with an alum lawyer about a year ago, and a year in this time frame is like decades. And he was saying, yeah, it's changed law firms 100%. And if your lawyers are graduating and they're not using AI, like really facile with it, they're not going to be employable. And so we've got a lot of things going on, for example, in KEX, the new Emerging and Collaborative Studies. We have been conducting seminars, trying to integrate it, and I think Haslam's doing a good job of it in every discipline that they can.
What about, though, your ability to make sure there is academic integrity and that students really are getting the skills and truly learning?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I know there's exercises that go on, say, for example, in the English department where they generate an article with AI and then use the criteria they have been taught for what makes a good article to evaluate the article, the AI generated. You can tell what's AI generated when you start really looking, and helping them learn sort of the difference. See, to me, I think that's a really healthy way to think about AI. It can do some things for you, but it doesn't take the place of your voice and what you know as standards for writing, for truth, that kind of thing.
Let's talk about you for a second. Your scholarship is on leadership.
Yes.
So you were an organizational scientist on leadership, change, management, and strategic decision-making.
Correct.
If I got that right.
Yeah.
Okay, so big question. What is the difference between researching and teaching leadership and actually doing it?
You know, that's a great question. I have a little presentation that I do every now and then. I did it just last week in a class I'm teaching with Governor Haslam, not to be name dropping, but he's so amazing. This is our 4th year to teach a class on leadership. And one of the things I have got a little slide that I go, what I thought I knew, and as a scholar, none of it was wrong. It's just it was incomplete. And now what I know. So, for example, I used to think that leaders really, people looked to them for the solutions. Like, you got to have the plan, you got to have the solution, you got to have the answers. I now really see that my job is to surface the answers and surface the questions even. Like, that's where you start. I used to think leaders did, they talked, told people stuff. And I used to think that leaders did stuff. This is really technically speaking, did things. Actually, my job is to enable people who work for me to have the resources they need to do the things and get their folks to do the things. My job is so much more helping people see the potential and then supporting them to do it. So I thought, for example, that I did think that planning was a little out of date in some ways. I wrote an article about the emergence of big change. It doesn't have to always be planned. But once you decide this is what we want to go with, then you need execution abilities, and implementing is so much harder than dreaming up ideas.
I notice on campus, you are everywhere. I mean, which is one reason that the students here just know you and love you. But it takes a lot for you to make the big decisions and also appear at everything. And then you're in social media so everybody sees it. How do you pull that off?
When I first came here, we did some conversation around, and I was asking a lot of questions. I did on the listening tour to get started. And one of the things I heard people saying is we want to be proud of the chancellor. We want to feel more connected to the chancellor. And of course, when you stop and think about that, what does that mean? There's 40,000 students. As you just said, there's thousands of people. There's the whole state. So how do you think about that? And so we started, and I think we've been very strategic about the social media. We have an agenda with that. We want people to feel connected. We want people to know what a chancellor does. We want people to feel like this is my university, even though they never went here, never will go here. So that's been a real driver behind some of the social media. And just the other day, somebody messaged me. I do read this stuff, although my family's going, quit looking at the comments, Mom. But there was a comment that said, in response to a posting I did, like, meeting with people, doing this, doing that. They said, Chancellor, we love feeling like we're part of your day-to-day. It's like, wow, we're getting there.
But that's true, because I will see you in a cafeteria line sometimes. I'll see you at some big, not just the big events, but just things on campus. You just pop up everywhere.
Well, social media makes it look like you're more places than you are, but
but you almost are. If I were to look at you on a daily basis, you're somewhere and I know where.
Well,
you know what I mean? Because you're letting us know. How do you pull that off at our huge campus? Do you have your own golf cart? Do you have your own photographer? Tell us the logistics.
Yes. No, we have a great central communications and marketing team headed by Tisha Benton, who's our vice chancellor for communications and marketing. And I would say, this is another thing I've learned. Everything we're doing in that space is strategic. It's never just, oh, hey, this would make a good picture. I mean, there's maybe a little of that, but it's all strategic. What are we trying to communicate? What is the message? One of the things I've learned from Tisha, for example, is start with the following. What is it that we want people to take away from hearing this statement? What's the key takeaway? And start there, and then write out and think through what you're going to say. So I'm so fortunate to have a team of people. She's got great photographers, videographers, all that stuff. And it's not just about me; it's the whole campus. But we've got a message.
But you are very visible, and I think it's working.
Well, thank you. Years ago, when I was dean of business school in Nebraska, one of my advisory board members said, Donde, you are the brand of the college. We were an unnamed college. This is a branded school. Mm-hmm. And I said, I just don't agree with that. I mean, it's not about me. It's about this college, what we're doing, we're building. He said, what do you think? And he really pushed me hard. He said, what do you think Apple's brand is? Steve Jobs. And I started thinking how the leader not just stewards the brand, but is part of the brand. So,
which, speaking of you as the brand, you're almost always in orange. How many closets of orange, which is the UT color?
I have more pieces that are the wrong color than the right color. I order them online. And I'm like, oh, that's not going to work. You know what? I think it's one of the most important distinctions about this university. You travel anywhere in the world with the orange on, and they go Vols when you walk by them at the airport. So I love the orange, and I've got a lot of it, I have to admit.
True. I have a little of it, but not nearly like you do. Yeah. What about leading as a woman at the CEO level? Do you think about that, or do you dismiss it?
Well, it would be dishonest if I said I didn't think about it. So, for example, I did mention to you that in the SEC, I'm the only woman.
Yes.
But beyond that observation, I just do my work, and I love all those folks. We the issues don't have anything to do with gender, and I feel respected, and I felt that way my whole career. I've been at this long enough to where the first department I was part of, there were 2 women, but to me, it wasn't about that. It was like, I want to do this job well. I want to get recognized for being a good scholar. I want to get good teaching evaluations. That kind of thing. So for example, last year we hired 2 new chancellors in the UT system. And they were both women. So now we have these meetings with Randy and the other chancellors, and it looks different and it feels different. But we didn't go out to hire 2 women. It just turned out that the best candidates, and I think that's the way it should be. It's merit-based.
I like your answer that the issues aren't male-female per se, but
not really.
As a woman, do you find you have to be more involved in, the softer parts? They expect you to do that, or in sponsorship? You have to be strong, but is there a different expectation?
You know, I every year I get asked to speak to the Women of Haslam. I love that student organization. And I do this thing partly about how we use the space we have. And I remember the first time I got on a publicly traded board, and I showed up for the first meeting. I got there about 5 minutes before the meeting was going to start. Mistake number one. The other people on the board had all been there for 30 minutes. They were chit-chatting, having coffee, whatever. I missed that. And they had spread out their stuff on the table. So they were plugged in, laptop, phone, whatever. And I'm like diminished. I mean, I thought about this later.
Yeah.
I put those words on it. So I've shared with them what I've learned. Like, okay, you know, get there, be part of the socializing, set up your space, you know, declare your I'm here kind of thing, not in an aggressive way, but just I learned from observing that there are things about how we present ourselves that can make a difference. And people are, if I'm the new member on that board, and just try to picture those other people on the board, I show up essentially late, even though I thought I was 5 minutes before the meeting, and I've got this kind of space at the table. So that was an important lesson to me. And so I try to pass that on.
What about strengths coaching? You are so big on that.
Yeah.
The CliftonStrengths. And I noticed when I joined UT last year, people will put their strengths in their signature line on their email, or they'll put it in their bios.
Right.
And at first I'm like, what the heck is this? What are they putting all these things on?
Right. I'll tell you where I first was introduced to strengths was at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, where Don Clifton, the founder of all of this and the CEO of Gallup, was an ed psych professor. And he first asked the question, you know, what would happen if we quit studying what's wrong with people? Like, look at organizations. Why do we have so much turnover? Why is there so much toxicity in the workplace? Why is there, you know, and instead focused on what's right with people. And so I never knew him. He was deceased, but I knew his 4 children, who were all involved in running Gallup at the time. And they gave an incredible gift to the College of Business, and we started the Don Clifton Strengths Institute. All of our business students started taking strengths. But we didn't even begin to use it there like we're using it here. Our Student Success Division, run by Amber Williams, has really honed it. Every freshman has a strengths coach. And I see students on campus.
Every freshman
Every
does.
freshman.
So I find it interesting because I would say, what's wrong? What's the weakness? How do we improve it? And you look, what are our strengths and how do we build on them?
How do we leverage our strengths to be successful?
Okay. What are your strengths, Donde?
Strategic, achiever, positivity, futuristic, maximizer, and the 6th I always like to say is woo. So I can raise money. Get in your pocket.
Yes, so those, I did look you up, and you have that on your bio.
Right.
And I did my strengths, too.
Okay, what are yours?
We only match on one, achiever.
Okay.
Then mine is competition, focus, ideation, and arranger.
Okay, I know exactly what that means. All those mean about you. So, for example, start with what's your first one? Strategic? No.
Achiever. Was
Achiever.
My first
Okay,
one.
we share that. Give me the next one.
My next one is competition.
Competition.
I'm very competitive.
I'm shocked by that. You work for the Wall Street Journal. You came from corporate America. Okay.
Yeah.
Competition that's a great strength. The head of our advancement operation, Brian Broyles, it's one of his top strengths. That serves him well every day. I know what the strengths of my team are.
I was like, I should have it strategic like Donde, but no, it's a competitor.
You know what? You use, there's no such thing. This is one thing you'll learn. There's 34 strengths. There's no such thing as the best set. It is who's the best at using the strengths they have. So, for example, Danny White on my team, I think, is one of the only ones who has command in that top 5. Meaning, he can walk into a room and you need me to take charge, right? Then I can do it. They're all over the place. 2 of my chief advisors have harmony as their number 1 strength.
That definitely is not
It's
mine.
32 out of 34 on mine.
Wow.
So it's a great compliment. My husband has context in his top 5, which means very aware of what's happened in the past, what's happening around us, what boundaries there are. I'm off and running to the whatever. But it is important for me, like my head assistant context is one of her number 1. So it's a way of complementing each other's strengths. And I love it. It's a tool, a leadership tool I've used. I'm getting better and better at it, I think, in terms of my own team. Before a difficult conversation with somebody maybe on my team, I'll go and remind myself, what are their top 5 strengths? And instead of seeing it as, oh, I may have a potential conflict here, I think of it as, you know what, that is her arranger strengths. Arranger is one of yours. Arranger means you can take an idea and have it in place tomorrow. Getting everything arranged, getting it fixed, getting it set up. Now that can drive other people crazy who are context people. I'm slow to process, I'm deliberative, I'm analytical. And so it's helped me in that way to see things not so much as conflict, but as differences in how we function. And so let's make our functioning together excellent by recognizing those things.
Let's also talk about just the future at UT and higher ed. What is your prediction for 2030, which will be when your second 5-year term is concluding? So what do you predict for UT and for the nation in higher ed?
For the nation in higher ed, the trend is that the big flagship schools are going to be just fine. You know, you've heard about the enrollment, the age decline, the change in the population, enrollments will be declining. The big flagships are going to do well. However, in some of these southern states, well, actually across the country, the difference in the age population of 18-year-olds by 2040 is going to be really hurting many of the states around us. So for us, we're a state that's growing. Our population is going to be growing, but we're going to have to keep kids interested in coming to the flagship here, because every state around us, I can tell you, is going to be coming after them, offering them this or that, whatever. But where I hope that we are in 5 years, some of this next level we're trying to achieve, will we have achieved it all in 5 years? Probably not. But I think we will be well on our way to the world and the country especially seeing us as a way of doing higher ed differently. That I want people to think of us as, you know what, at Tennessee, something's happening there because everybody wants to go to school there. We are attracting great faculty. Our problem is, how many students are we going to take in Haslam? I mean, everyone wants to come to Haslam. How many engineers are we going to produce? The state needs more than we're producing, or all of the universities together. How are we going to do that? Those are great opportunities for all of us. So I think I'm thrilled about being here in Tennessee at this institution at this time, even though some people would say, how can you be happy about that? Presidents are turning over constantly. I think Tennessee is well positioned to be a leader in the nation for how to do higher education. I think only the flagship, the land grants, have the potential for sort of saving this crisis, if you will, of confidence in higher education. I believe the land grants are going to do it, and I think we could be leading it.
Let's do some quick fire questions.
I never do well at this.
I don't, so that's why I asked.
We might need to edit these out. No. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. What is your favorite book?
Anything written by Barbara Kinsolving. Any novel. I like to read novels. Yep.
Okay. What is your best and your worst habit?
My best habit is that I think I am good at making other people feel good about themselves. My worst habit is I can fly into over-functioning, kind of like, gibbering around at home. My family's kind of saying, calm down.
Okay. And also, what is one question you ask yourself before every big decision? And you make a lot of big decisions.
What do I want people to think this is about? What is at the core of this?
Our last question. This show is called Office Hours,
Right.
Business Edition. So if you could pick one person to have office hours with, who would that be?
It'd either be Barack Obama or George W. Bush. And I say them because I'm fascinated with both of their presidencies. In many ways, more after the fact than during it. I would just love to know how they manage the pressures and the stress and still maintain fabulous families and all that.
Thank you, Donde.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.